Cool. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
The electrophonic, it's derived from when the orchestra first opened, and the students put on a matinee, and they decided to name it electrophonic, electro meaning light, and phonic meaning sound. And it started just as a simple 30-minute skit of them doing the Michael Jackson sort of just homage to him. And the next year, students really liked the show, so I thought we'd bring it back. And throughout the years, we've just added more instruments, added percussion, we've added vocal, we've added color guard and percussive instruments, and we've just made a really bright and amazing show.
The show, it's a lot of fun because not only is it involving 3 different aspects of the arts, so flag work is going to be involved, also instrumental music such as band and orchestra, but also percussionists will be a major part of the show. And with the whole electrophonic part, the phonic is the sound, electro means that there's going to be lots of lights in action.
This year's theme is time, so we're just incorporating a bunch of songs that really just have the word time in it. We're just having fun with it.
My favorite song is probably the Time Warp because we get to dance to it, and it's really exciting. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because it gets a lot of people involved into it, so I'm excited for that.
Music does a lot of things for me. If I wasn't in music, I'm sure I wouldn't be the best student now, but really the band students are really the best students in the school. And music has really shaped me as an individual to make me more responsible.
Music has actually done a lot for me. Like, if you think about it, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have music. I've met a lot of my really good friends here, and the instructors have guided me throughout.
It's been a big part of my life, and it has shaped who I am and my personality, my morals, throughout marching band, concert band, even electrophonic.
The show is May 4th and May 5th at 7 p.m. here at Lincoln North Star in the auditorium. Think of the coolest show that you could think of with band, music, and lights, and it's 10 times better than that.
And your mics are live.
I call to order this meeting of the Lincoln Public Schools Board of Education for April 25th, 2017. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Byer. Here. Mr. Boswell.
Present.
Mrs. Danick.
Here.
Mrs. Duncan.
Here.
Mr. Mayhew.
Present.
Ms. Mungard.
Here.
Mr. Schulte.
Present.
I would note that the Open Meeting Act is posted at the rear of the room if anyone wants to take a look at that. We have one set of minutes for approval. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, those will stand as approved. Next, under special reports, presentations, and celebrations of success, we have a great student celebration this evening, one that honors teaching our students about saving lives. This school year, Lincoln Public Schools entered a partnership with the American Heart Association to provide all LPS middle schools with CPR mannequins, which created the opportunity for 8th graders to learn the proper form and technique for CPR and practice hands-on lessons. Matt Avey, Curriculum Specialist for Health and Physical Education at the Lincoln Public Schools, and Dan Claridge, Health and Physical Education Teacher at Scott Middle School, will address the board, and Scott Middle School students will demonstrate what they have learned about CPR.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Joel. We're excited to be here tonight. Like Don said, we have Dan Claridge, one of our 8th grade health and physical education instructors at Scott Middle School, along with 3 of his students at Scott, here to do a demonstration. In a second, I'm going to turn it over to Dan to kind of take you through that. But I just wanted to briefly say, last year, Dan and I and the rest of the Health Steering Committee noticed a gap in the ability to teach kids in our 8th grade curriculum, CPR and first aid. What we had currently in the curriculum guide really just focused on theory more than practical application. And we really wanted to be able to introduce those psychomotor skills, but we didn't have necessarily the resources. Thankfully, the American Heart Association stepped in and provided 3 CPR in schools kits per middle school for all 11 middle schools, which equaled about a $47,000 donation to our middle schools for this particular piece of curriculum. So we're really excited to have that now in our curriculum. I'm going to let Dan take it from here, but thank you for having us.
Okay, a little bit with what Matt said. I've been teaching 8th grade for over 20 years, and within our curriculum, we've had first aid CPR every year, and we could talk about it, we could go through it, give them the steps, have them watch the steps, and every year they'd ask, do we get to do it? Do we get to do it? And, we didn't. We didn't have the resources. We couldn't, even the time, with what we did have, it'd take too long to go through it all. So to finally have these, the kids have really enjoyed it. It's just been great to finally take it out and have kids be able to practice. It makes it more enjoyable. It makes it a great day for hands-on, but it also shows them a little bit. When you watch something, it's not quite the same, but for them to actually take out one of the mannequins and have to use their strength to compress the proper distance to make sure they're doing a compression right, it takes a little strength. And then also the endurance it takes when we say, let's try this for 2 minutes, and to realize to actually help someone save a life, it takes a little strength and effort. And I think that's the bottom line. Now with kids practicing and being able to actually perform it, hopefully in the future that, they might be more willing to act and step forward and help somebody if that arises. I brought 3 students with me, Adam Dahlman, Izzy Weber, and Rose Curtis. And Adam just would like to say one thing about what he enjoyed about it this year.
I'm Adam, and I thought that it was a very exciting experience because you gotta actually go and do CPR instead of just watching or learning about it or hearing about it. So you actually gotta know what to do instead of just how to do it. So you could actually go and use a dummy and actually use CPR instead of hearing about it. So I thought it was a really good experience because it's pretty important to know how to do. So I thought that was very well.
Great. Thanks, Adam. We'll go ahead and demonstrate. Come right up here. And this is what we do in the classroom. Okay, you got to make room somehow and find room on the floor. Okay, so they each have their own individual. We were given 3 of those.
Thank you.
Sorry. We're given 30 of these, so we use about 15. They can partner up. And what we usually have is good video that comes with the curriculum so students can follow along, gives them a cadence so they can work at the proper rate of compressions that they need to. So what I'm going to do is set this here, and we'll go ahead and get started as they get in the proper technique and lean over the body as they press. Try and follow the cadence. You can hear the click sound. So what the click saying is they're getting deep enough so they know they're doing proper compressions. Okay? And they follow along and try and sustain that the whole time. There's 2 buttons on there, so some students struggle. You can make it a little softer to make sure that they can find success. Right now that's on the hard one. And we just try to sustain that for 2 minutes. So as you can see, it would take a little bit of effort as they go along. We're just going to go about 30 seconds here. And then normally when we stop, which is right here, we just trade with partners to get a little break, and then we might be able to do it again, and they can just get to see actually how long it takes or help their partner out also. So that's a quick demonstration, but we thank you for having us here tonight.
Comments? Annie?
Well, I used to work for the American Red Cross, and I made the films where to teach you how to do that, and you're really lucky you don't have to do the pump and blow anymore. So I think it's wonderful to have it as this amazing skill that you hope you never have to use, but if you do, you're well prepared. So thank you. You got to work.
Thank you, Dan, and the students for joining us tonight. All right, next that brings us to public consent. I have a number of cards here. And I would like to start by saying absolutely anybody who wishes to address the board can. And what I'm noticing is that there are a number of cards from folks who seem to be concerned about the same topic. And in the interest of time, if there are folks who don't necessarily each need 5 minutes and would like to elect somebody as kind of a spokesperson, that would be great too. But again, anybody who wants to come up absolutely can. So what we're going to do is start with, I apologize, this looks like Janie Rage.
Janice and Roger.
I'm sorry? Say it again.
Janice and Roger.
Janice Roger. Oh, I was way off. Please come forward.
I'm back today doing yard work, so I'm going to stand. Usually I'm much quicker than this. And my husband won't come up because he didn't comb his hair. He's been outside all day. So to come up. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. The reason I came tonight was I wanted to recognize, oh my gosh, my grandson's third grade teacher, Mr. Kuzer from Kuzer Elementary, Mr. Neil Sunderman. My husband and I, we had a situation 2 years ago, which, we thought we did everything right. We ended up becoming legal guardians to a grandson. That just happened to other people. It would never happen to us. We thought we did everything right. But I'm going to give you just a little brief history of Dayton. This won't take long, just so you can get an idea of what Mr. Sunderman faced with him. Dayton's father was very abusive to him in his home. Physically to his mother, resulting in numerous injuries, including a broken jaw. Dayton also witnessed his younger brother being abused. Dayton witnessed drug use, and drug dealing by his father. Dayton at one point did have a gun held to his head during a drug deal that went bad. Dayton went to preschool one day and told his teacher what was happening at home. And that's when we were aware of it, because we had never been exposed to anything. Our kids were not raised this way, so we were taken by shock. And anyway, they did arrest Dayton's father, and the result of everything that he did was 6 months of anger management. Dayton's father for the next year referred to him as a snitch. Dayton was attending another elementary and having difficulties focusing and adjusting just to the many changes that were going on. Dayton's mother is severely mentally ill and unable to care for him. His younger brother at this time, probably not for long, resides with his mother. And on top of that, this July, we had a house fire in our neighborhood. To all the Boy Scout leaders in here, one of our neighbors was a Boy Scout, an older boy, brought a fire flint and set our garage on fire. Not meaning, but it burned the whole garage, the whole house. Everything was 100% lost. Everything that Dayton owned in that house was lost. Everything we owned was. We made the choice to sell the lot because there were going to be legal issues with this family and subrogations and stuff, and we decided not to rebuild. We purchased a new home in the Kuzer district. Roger and I, we were nervous, and we were just oh, this is going to be bad. We were worried about the changes and the effect of everything that was taking place in Dayton's life. Mr. Sunderman from day one changed the course of Dayton's school year. He developed a personal relationship with Dayton. Dayton was excited about school and happy to get up every day to go see Mr. Sunderman. These are the remarks Dayton would make to us when he came home from school. Mr. Sunderman told me he holds me to a high expectation. Mr. Sunderman is helping me learn how to make friends. Mr. Sunderman, he is showing me how not to stand too close to people and respect their personal space. And he's teaching me to mind my own business. I know not everyone can be my friend now, but I can always respect people and treat people the right way. I know I don't have to fight because I've witnessed that, even if someone calls me a name. I can respect myself and walk away. I am always responsible for my choices. I can't blame anything that's happened to me or anything when I make a bad decision. I've made that decision. I have to learn to ignore things when people are trying to set me off. I think Mr. Sunderman would be a good counselor. He will always give me a hug on bad days and tell me everything's going to be okay. Mr. Sunderman is good at playing the schoolwork and the cello. He told me I'm very smart, and I have to do the best I can do and give 100% to everything I do. Mr. Sunderman he teaches me to respect you and Roger. He told me to always answer yes, no, or okay. The list goes on and on of things that, I could say numerous things that And this year, our biggest regret with Mr. Sunderman is that we never acknowledged him enough. You know, we both work full-time. I'm a nurse at the crisis center. My husband works full-time. And this, you know, starting over with nothing. I mean, like with silverware, adjusting to a new neighborhood and grieving the loss of everything that you had, plus the other changes, absolutely like made us be able to adapt better, because we knew when Dayton went to school, there was a teacher, even though he was a hard kid to handle, that took him under his wing and went out of his way to change the course of his life. And I totally believe that he has. We believe Mr. Sunderman should be given the title of the Teacher of the Year. I don't know how you do that. My parents were educators. I don't remember my dad ever. But we believe Mr. Sunderman's work with Dayton will last a lifetime. Please recognize this teacher. Best regards, Janice and Roger Pugh. And that's why we came tonight, because Dayton would have never been successful in the sports he plays, in his academics and other things, had it not been for this teacher. And I totally mean it, because he struggled at his other school. Nobody took the time with him, and the whole staff at Cooser has just been, I just can't describe it. And I think so many times, you know, teachers do so much that they're not recognized for, or parents want them to take all the roles on for everything, and when they fall short, then they're mad. But we just feel like we could not let this go by without recognizing him, and I thank you for listening to me. I'm nervous.
No need to be nervous, you did perfectly. Kathy?
Did you give Mr. Sunderman a copy of that beautiful letter?
Well, what we did was, well, hi, Mr. Sunderman, you're supposed to be watching too.
I know him well, that's why I asked, and I know his mother. So.
We gave one to the principal, and she told me she took Mr. Sunderman into the office, and
can I ask if we could have a copy and give it to Dr. Weber over there on the end? That would be awesome. Thank you.
That's all that I have to say. Yes?
Barb?
Thank you for being great grandparents.
Yes.
Well, you know, we were near retirement. We thought, Roger's, and on top of that, Roger's a step parent. He's never had kids. He's 62. Now he's got me and my messed up family. You know, the kids, that's not, I mean, you know, but he took this on willingly. I mean, we support these kids on our own. We get no child support. The dad doesn't work, nobody, you know. And so we could not walk away from this and go live our lives. We'd always wonder. And we didn't want Dayton to be one of those lost kids that's out wandering the streets trying to find his way. So.
Thank you. And thank you for going and complimenting our staff who work really hard.
Oh, I know they do, and I just feel like, you know, this is what I had to do. Anyway.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
All right, next I'd like to call up Jocelyn Hayes. And while she's coming up, I should have started with this. I would note that each person will get 5 minutes, and I'll start the clock when you start talking.
So I'm Jocelyn Hayes, and I'm here this evening with the LPS Dual Language Coalition. So all of you who are here this evening to support dual language, if you would please stand up. Thank you.
Good crowd, thank you. Welcome.
So we were here last year with about 60 people in our group asking for dual language to be considered as part of LPS. So we've met regularly over the past year, and we're here tonight just to have just for a few people to briefly give some updates as to what we've been doing and to ask where we are as far as the strategic plan.
Okay, so should I move on to the next card then? Is that the idea? Okay, got it. Amanda Morales, please.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Morales. I'm a faculty member at UNL. As of this August, I moved here from Kansas. I actually have to commend the school district again. It's the school district. That's the reason why we ended up in Lincoln. I had a faculty offer in Texas, and Lincoln won over Austin. So I love this place and I love this school. So with that said, I work in the teaching, learning, and teacher ed department, so I help prepare future teachers. And I am a daughter of a migrant farm worker. He's a longtime resident, born and raised in Texas, but he worked migrant fields all the way, really all over the United States. And my mom is Native American and Irish. And he met my mother when he was harvesting wheat and never left Kansas. So I can't tell you enough how much my father's culture and a half of my culture means to me. And the fact that he was migrant and traveled so much, I missed out on developing my Spanish fluency as a child. And I can't tell you how much it would have meant to me to have been a part of a dual language program. And now that I'm an adult and in college, I struggled to develop my fluency in Spanish and to regain my heritage language. And it's a whole lot harder when you're older. So much harder when you're older. But I feel like there was a piece of my childhood and my culture that was lost because I couldn't speak as deeply or as engaged with my grandparents and my aunts and uncles on my father's side. And it was such a loss. And so I have 2 little ones in the Lincoln Public School system. And they would most definitely benefit from a dual language program. And we are actually waiting to purchase a house in hopes that we might land in the catchment zone in a program where this would work out. So thank you all for your time. And again, I'm thrilled to be in Lincoln.
Thank you. Daniel Moran?
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for your time and consideration on this. My name is Daniel Moran. I am the dual language coordinator and also kindergarten teacher at Fremont Public Schools. We implemented dual language just 2 years ago. We're at the end of year 2. I came to speak with 2 purposes in mind. One, you've already heard reasons last year and coming up of the why should you implement dual language, and hopefully I can briefly describe why you can or how you can do such a thing. Just a few moments ago when you had that presentation of the CPR in schools, and I think everyone was moved by that, how, and not to parallel something that's life-saving or something like dual language that can be life-changing, but they put that curriculum, they implemented it, and it does have the possibility to change a child's life. Now, whether it be a child saving another child and whatever end you want to see it, it's not always the great district, the great teachers, the great administration that moves children and that truly changes them. In the case of dual language, it's also what the core curriculum presents. Moving on, this is the should part. Should you implement dual language? Why are we all here? Why did I drive to Fremont? From Fremont to here, it wasn't because I like Soresco's gas station. But a quick Google search would show you anything about bilingualism in the brain. It will show you how dual language students outperform their monolingual peers. It will show you how they are much more marketable. Myself being bilingual, I've had various opportunities both with freelance translating, with summer work. It's not very difficult when you're bilingual, and especially with regard to dual language, functionally bilingual. Students also develop higher order thinking skills much more quickly in a dual language environment. Teaching kindergarten, I have English native speakers learning Spanish, and half of the day they are trying to analyze, they're trying to create understanding with every sentence I say. Some other things that are just observable. I have in my classroom transfers from other schools that only transferred to my school because of dual language. I have a family that brings their kid from Elkhorn just so that that child can be in dual language. And we're all here for public schools. We're all here for each other, and but it is competitive, and we all want the best for our kids respectively, and I want the best in Fremont, and I want Lincoln to have the best for their kids. Parent communication is much improved. I know hearing stories from teachers that only speak English with Spanish-speaking parents that even if you have an interpreter, the message isn't always as clear and concise as you would hope. However, since dual language teachers, at least in our district, all are bilingual, that means that parent communication is a lot more smooth and fluid. Another thing is that there's no need to pull students out for ESL or ELL classes. As children, Spanish-speaking or English native, they have half the day in their native language. From day one, they're able to transition to the rules, the procedures, the routines, and there's not really that block that would be language. There is no language barrier. Another thing that I've seen just in Fremont that I think is just so neat from a community standpoint is the perspective of seeing neighborhood children mixed with transfers in. It's a social climate that's unique to only that. I haven't seen it in any other school, in any other situation. I think those children, just because of the character we want them to be exposed to so many different types of people, it's truly invaluable. The last, and I'm hurrying, is the Can You. We're doing it in Fremont. We have not had to hire any consultants. It's myself with the budgeting advice from my principal and other members of administration, but I'm the one. I'm teaching and I'm developing the curriculum. So I know that the big thing from your standpoint is what type of fiscal burden would this impose on the district? Well, you're not having to have speakers come in. You have the resources at UNL, UNO, OPS, FPS at your door. Another thing is that yes, there is overhead. You have to buy Spanish books, but we at Fremont, because of technology these days, we only have to order materials in Spanish. The English materials are easy enough to supplement in most content areas that they can be accessed online. The last thing is that would prove difficult. The only thing I can really see, as long as you have the hardworking people you already have at your back, is staffing. Staffing people who are that competent bilingually, academically, is difficult, and it's a challenge. However, with UNL implementing a bilingual or a dual language graduate endorsement, with UNO having the same, the more programs we can have and the more communication we have, we'll be able to finally grow our own. And that would eliminate the real only issue that I've encountered in my 8 years of dual language experience. So hopefully I didn't go too much over. I'm not known to be concise.
Thank you. Did fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Patsy Coe-Jones. Come on up.
Might as well. Yeah. It's good to be home, talking to my people. I'm here tonight to personally speak about the dual language program as a former, very proud LPS teacher, and as an educator, and as a parent. It didn't take me very long this evening to realize that the first division of my presentation was still right on target, because all the years that I taught at Lincoln High and in LPS, I always had this extraordinary sense that LPS was all about students and doing the right thing for people, the right things for students. And tonight, as I came in and I watched the first thing on the screen come up with North Star and the music, and saw the students demonstrating what they were doing, and listening to a woman who was so grateful to you and to a teacher for everything that you offer, I thought to myself, we're still about doing the right things in LPS. And the right thing is to make students who are global citizens. In 2006, I had the opportunity to travel to Russia as a teacher. And I spent nearly a month there in a gymnasium. And a gymnasium there is a school system. And there were the littlest kids clear through their last grade there, which was a little different than ours. But all of the kids there spoke English. And every day I went to a class. I went to many classes, as a matter of fact, but I went to a class that was a language class. And in that language class, I was humbled beyond all measure. I had 4 students that sat around me, and the rest of the students sat in the room. And they visited with their teacher, and they were learning things about languages. But in that room, German was being spoken, Russian was being spoken, and French. And I was speaking English, and I was the only person in the room who was speaking just English. Meanwhile, the 4 students that surrounded me were translating for me. And I felt so humbled, and I felt this sense of urgency that we should be doing the same things for our students here in the United States so that they can truly be global citizens. The last thing I want to tell you is that this can't be all that impossible, because my son is 37 years old, and a little tiny town of Cozad, Nebraska, where I taught for many years, when he was in middle school, the administration came to me and asked me if I would allow my son to be in a dual language program. And I was thrilled. I thought, this is a really, really great opportunity. Little did I realize what a great opportunity it was for him and all of the other students in the class. Half of them spoke Spanish and half of them spoke English, and they spent 2 or 3 years together. And I'm sure you can talk to him today and find out what he thinks the benefits of that were, besides friendships and long-lasting relationships that he's had over the years with those students. But he walked out of there with a skill that he's used so many, many, many times, and he'll tell me about it. He'll say, today I had the opportunity. And I don't think he would have done that if he had not been immersed in the way that he was. The problem with taking 2 years of French, as I did, and 2 years of Latin is that you come out knowing a few words, but you do not come out knowing how to speak a language, or maybe even understand somebody when they're speaking it. So tonight I'd like to say to you that all my years of teaching at LPS, you did the right thing for kids, and I'm sure you'll find some way to do this right thing as well. So thanks for listening to me, and I hope I can come back home again soon.
Thank you, Patsy. Next, I've got Lizette Torres-Gerald.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisette Torres-Gerald. I'm the Assistant Director of the Cooper Center at Nebraska Wesleyan University, which is a writing center on campus. I'm also a parent of a multiracial child. The reason why I'm here today is because I want my son to be able to speak the language that I was not taught as a child, and to benefit intellectually from what he already does know. So right now he can speak 5 different languages, at least counting up to 10. So he can speak English, Spanish, French, German, and Japanese, and he's 3.5. The amount of information that he already knows, particularly German, which he just picked up from his threes teacher at Northeast Kindercare, is amazing. He's just a very bright child, and I think the dual language program would help him develop those skills. My parents were migrants from Puerto Rico who landed in Harlem, and when they arrived, they stopped speaking Spanish and picked up English really quickly because they were basically physically and verbally abused by the native English speakers in Harlem. And because of that, they chose to not teach my sisters and I Spanish. at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. It was a way to assimilate to the culture. But what I found out after my grandmother passed in 2010 was that I lost my connection to my family and to my ancestry. Now that I have a child of my own, and now that he is a member of lots of different cultures, I want him to be able to stay connected to his family and to his ancestry and to be proud of that. And I think a dual language program here in Lincoln would help him to do that. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think a lot of the other children who are multiracial and biracial, as well as immigrants from other countries, would feel welcome and would benefit from such a program here in Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you. These are all the cards I've got. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I would say a couple of things. And first off, I've spoken with several of you. Teresa invited me to the meeting at Starbucks, which was neat. And at the time, I explained about our process. And as Patsy knows from her service, the way that we would, implement a new program, something like this. This was something I explained at the meeting as well. So we would need to have substantive conversation. We need to have our process. Then we would need to vote on that as a board, and that the timing for that is that we are going to wait until our strategic plan process is complete and then take a look at things like that. And what I suggested was that if this was something that people were interested in, they should participate in the strategic plan. I know that several did. In fact, how many did participate either at a forum or filling out a survey? Thank you very much for doing that. Good. And just before this meeting, we had a work session where the major themes of the data that we collected from that were presented to the board. What we reported at that work session is that we're going to be working on that over the summer, and we should be working on a deliverable which would be due in August. Okay, very good. So then at that point is when we'll be taking a look at this is the plan, this is the direction for we're going forward, and then things like that will start, like the dual language program would be things that we'd be able to start talking about at that point. So that's kind of the official answer. And then I'd like to talk for a minute just for myself, not representing the board or the district, but my own opinion is that I think there's so much merit to what you guys were saying. And since the meeting that we had, I've been doing my own research, and I can tell you this is something I'm very much interested in pursuing. So when we get to the point where we're having those conversations, I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you to all of you for coming and sharing your thoughts again with us. Appreciate that. That's all the blue cards I have. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board on anything? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Barb?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda item 8.1 as printed in our board agenda materials.
Thank you, Barb. And since everybody except Barb and I have some kind of conflict tonight, I will be seconding this motion myself. And now I know we've got a bunch of things we want to say. Kathy?
Out of an abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on check number 578582 as part of agenda item 8.2.A of the agenda materials for this meeting. I vote in favor of the other consent items.
Connie, I'll just work my way down.
Out of abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on check number 578582 as part of agenda item 8.2A of the agenda materials for this meeting. I vote in favor of all other consent items.
Annie?
Out of an abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on check number 578733 as part of an agenda item 8.2A of the agenda materials for this meeting. I vote in favor of all other consent items.
Lanny?
Out of an abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on check number 578582 as part of agenda item 8.2.A of the agenda materials for this meeting. I vote in favor of all other consent items.
Matt?
Out of abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on check number 578734, which was just a reimbursement check.
as part of agenda item 82A of the agenda materials for this meeting. I vote in favor of the other consent items.
Lanning?
I just have a question. If I heard the motion correctly, it was to approve item 8.1. Was the intent of the motion also to include item 8.2, 3, and 4?
Yes.
And that's also, my understanding, is second. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Boswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Danick?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Mungard?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes. As a quick note, Connie has agreed to represent us at the Career Academy ceremony tonight, so thank you for doing that, Connie. If it's necessary, she's excused for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Next, we'll be moving on to items for first reading. We'll start with item 9.1.1, newly annexed property to the City of Lincoln. Lanny?
This item comes from the Planning Committee, where I serve with Matt and Barb. We have 3 annexations tonight for first reading. The first is 32 acres near 70th and Arbor Road. That would be assigned to Norwood Park, Dawes Middle School, and Northeast High School. The second is 42 acres near 7th and Alvo Road, which is just west of Cooser, which would be assigned to Cooser, SCO, and North Star. And the third is 73 acres near 90th and A Street, which would be assigned to Pirtle, Lux, and East. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Lanny. Questions? Kathy?
I don't need an answer tonight, but can you get me back about how much housing we're looking at in those 3 sites?
Okay, and you're interested in the potential housing? 'Cause
Potential housing.
We annex.
Correct.
Right. Okay, yeah, we can get that number for you.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, that'll be back for action at our next meeting. Next, item 9.1.2, the Student Calendar Committee recommendation. Annie?
All right, well, it's been my pleasure to be the board representative on the calendar committee once again. It's truly a dedicated group of educators and parents led by the ever tireless John Neal. It's also really been a truly busy group of people because we usually bring the calendar in January, and due to very busy schedules and unusually uncooperative weather and a very cooperative winter, we had to reschedule quite a few meetings. But John and Rita are here to share our overall conversation and our ultimate calendar decision that we are going to ask the board to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This truly seems to mark a certain rite of passage every year when we start looking at calendar options. So the Calendar Committee, which is a joint committee between representatives from Lincoln Public Schools, the community, as well as Lincoln Education Association, is a part of our professional negotiated agreement that we work together to develop a calendar, which is just another piece of evidence and that shows the collaboration that we have with the district and the Education Association. It is also spelled out in board policy as well, the process for board committees. And so we took on that work. And just as a reminder to sort of set us back again in the framework in which we approach the calendar work that we do, and I might add we're looking at the student calendar for 2018-19 is the proposal we're bringing to you tonight, that the purpose of our calendar committee is really to make sure that our calendar demonstrates our commitment to learning that we have within the district, and it's based on really sound educational practices and one that can support good teaching and learning in our district. Thank you. We're working out very well. He's the clicker, I'm the
We're a
doctor.
good team.
Yes, we are. One of the things that you probably remember from past times when we've presented calendar options to you is that our work is based on a number of variables that back in around 2011, I believe, is when we first took a look at what are really some guiding principles or variables that should help us direct our calendar day placements. And some of those variables are here for you to review. One that I might point out, keeping semester and quarter breaks the same for elementary and secondary is obviously important, especially to our parents who may have students in both levels, and having the 4 quarters of the year fairly equal. I will add, however, that typically one of the things that we've tried to look at is making third quarter just slightly longer than the others to accommodate for state testing that occurs during April, which does cut into instructional time. And the rest of the variables I believe you have in front of you, and we can answer any other questions about those if you have them. Okay.
Also, you might have forgotten, or perhaps some of the public who's viewing the meeting tonight might have forgotten the actual process that we use to go about building a calendar. And so we have a brief video clip here that will help to demonstrate that for you.
Our task today is to create a school calendar for Lincoln Public Schools. We begin with 180 days. That number is determined in part by teacher contracts, state guidelines, and best educational practices. Our top priority for our school calendar is to ensure the continuity, efficiency, and effectiveness of teaching and learning in our school district. Sounds simple, but the school calendar revolves around many variables and factors that make the task something more like putting together a puzzle. So, we start with those 180 days of school. We have found that having winter break at the same time that we have semester break is the wisest academic decision for our students. And each semester needs to have the same general number of days. This factor determines why school starts earlier in August and ends earlier in May than in decades past. Our next decision is to identify spring and fall quarters, also having roughly the same number of days. But there's more. Student vacation days should not interrupt instruction just prior to any major assessments. In-school assessments typically come at the end of each quarter, which means quarter breaks occur directly after. And since there are generally more assessment days in the spring, second semester needs to be slightly longer. We attempt to avoid having short weeks of school. Again, it's not sound academically. And whenever possible, non-student days should occur on common holidays such as the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., Thanksgiving Day, Labor Day, and more. Finally, at the end of all of these critical decisions, we have a school calendar.
And those variables, when applied in the way you saw in the video, you can see how that looks differently in the sample of the two calendars that are in front of you right now. 2007 and 8 were before we started using the different calendar variables. 2018 and 19 is now, not only have been using the variables a while, it's becoming more and more of a science each year. And so I'll just point out a couple of the differences that we think are really making a difference for learning, which is that critical mission of the calendar committee. The first is, if you look at the difference in the second quarters, at the end of second quarter in 2007-8, of the last 18 days of the semester, 14 of them were non-student days. Only 4 of them were student days, where students were in school with teachers immediately before semester assessments. So again, that's not the greatest way to go into assessment, having that much time off. By switching our priority to matching the calendar to our instructional needs, we switched when winter break was, and immediately before semester finals now, and what we're proposing for 18-19, there aren't any breaks. They're all student days leading up to those assessments. And the other one to note is in third quarter. If you look back in 2007-8, there were 10 non-student days associated with when our quarter break was then, right before NISA testing window opened. And now that's reversed. Spring break, or the quarter break is a little bit earlier, and so we're leading into NISA testing with instruction with teachers and students together. The application of those calendar variables help us create a calendar that's much more effective in providing the right opportunities for learning. A couple of the other comparisons. Go ahead and back. Nope, go ahead. 2 forward. One more. One more. And one more. There you go. I'm not sure. I don't think you can break it. But. There we go. Okay, some of the other comparison is how we look compared to other school districts, and this is a comparison we've shown you before. When you look at the number of days we have in our calendar and districts surrounding us, so that's surrounding us in population. Millard is a little bit smaller than we are, Omaha's a little bit larger, and then in our location, Lancaster County. So you look at Fremont and Grand Island in our conference, Malcolm, Norris, Raymond Central. We're very comparable in our start dates, in our end dates, and about the lengths of our vacation times at quarters and semesters. So when you compare our family's experience and other families, it's very comparable. And again, because every school district in the state is trying to match up a calendar that works the best for their students, and everyone is finding that same kind of general sweet spot. The other is a comparison. When we had the break at winter break, there was a change at winter break. There was a lot of conversation about how that would affect summer. And so we looked at the 5 years prior to 2011 when we moved the winter break and semester break together, and the 5 years after. And you can see the average days of summer have not changed dramatically. When you look at the average is still around 80. Summer's a little bit longer now than it was before, but again, there wasn't a loss of summer. There was a change. We start a little bit earlier in August and end a little bit earlier in May, but the amount of time that families have in the summer is the same amount of time in summer school and summer CLCs, and those experiences are very comparable. And then a reminder, again, in comparison, some of the things we don't cover in the student calendar that's presented to you today is the length of the school day. That's not part of the calendar. We're looking more at days. The length of the school calendar is also not, we're given the days that we need to divide up. NSA practices, so marching band, football, volleyball, softball, all of those scheduled dates are set for the entire state, regardless of your calendar, by the NSAA. So when we start or end school doesn't change those practice times. About when we scheduling during the school day, start between the beginning and the end, early release days, elementary plan days, and professional development schedules. Once we have a student calendar, other groups start to come in and then fill in those other gaps.
One of the most valuable things about our process is that we truly do have voices from all the stakeholders, and that includes Annie, representing the Board of Education, myself, LEA, and John Neal co-chairing the committee. Great parent involvement. Lana Bleimeister and Jeff Grunewald have been phenomenal, participating for several years now on this committee. And then other teacher representatives, including Deb Rasmussen, Julie Colby, and Alan, now it's Dobell, Lori Lutke, and Dave Peters. And they are representing a cross-section of both elementary and secondary. We also have administrators, Molly Bates and Mark Larson, who participate in the committee and have for several years. And then from the Human Resources Department, we have Robbie Seibert and Lori Oxley, because again, one of the other things we always have to look at are contractual issues that might impact the calendar. The way that our committee process worked, and it really has become really like clockwork. It's a smooth running machine on the calendar committee now. And because we really pretty much follow the same process each time. One is reviewing our purpose, reviewing those calendar variables and making sure that all the committee members are familiar with those, applying then those variables to the 2018-19 calendar template, developing an initial draft of what we think a calendar might look like, and then we take I shouldn't say we, John takes the results of that and puts that together so that we can take it in front of a broader group for feedback, including the Community Curriculum Council, PTO groups, and the LEA's Faculty Representative Council. And that way we take the work of the committee and can get some additional feedback, asking them to maybe look at a couple of different iterations of it and choose one that they favor. And it's proven interesting rather the last couple of years in that all of those groups then when John and I come back together to compare the feedback,